Hello everybody, welcome to tonight's live stream. Hello fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Sorry for the late start there. Weird technology problems. I started the live stream over here on the old MacBook here. You know, when you stream on YouTube, unlike Twitch, where I also stream, you fire up your stream software, it starts shooting the data out to YouTube, and YouTube has a live control panel that allows you to see the statistics like the concurrent viewers, chat rate, playback, duration, quality, all that stuff. And you see a little preview in the corner, and then it tells you something like, hey, your stream is good to go. It's time to go live. Good evening, Ben. How was your day? Or how is your day? And it did that thing where the little preview in the corner showed that I was getting data, and the little button in the top right said, you're ready to go live. Click here. And the little statistics down at the bottom said that it was doing real good. And then, hello, Ashwin. And then it popped up a little overlay that said, YouTube live streaming is not available right now. And that seemed weird because it was totally doing a thing. But anyway, apparently it seems to be working because I can see my face right there. So hello everybody. We are going to fiddle around with a couple of things here. I want to look at LSP a little bit more because in the last stream we looked at it a little bit for Lua related stuff, and I'd like to play with that a little bit more. Maybe try one of those things that Ashwin mentioned, and I think are mentioned in the documentation about some pre-done helpers. Hey, fixed a hard to find bug. I also kind of did that in the project that I was working on, and then I encountered a completely other one. Sublime Text 4 is rolling out when it's ready, but if you have a license, you could be using it right now, like I am and a lot of people on the Discord. Pretty cool stuff. Hello, Ashish. I'll probably pronounce that incorrectly. That font is a little bit tiny. I did not make this box as big as normally I do. Pardon me. The eyesight, it is failing at my age. But yeah, so Sublime Text 4, it'll be rolling out when it's ready. I assume real soon now. Hints have been dropped that... Stop that, speakers. Hints have been dropped that it's probably close-ish. I mean, it's been stable for quite some time. I've been using it as my production level editor for the better part of a year and a bit now, I guess. December 2019 to now. Man, so I can count on one hand the number of times where there was a bug that required me to use a different version, and usually the fix for that came out a couple hours later. Like I'd go to bed and wake up and discover that 10 minutes after I went to bed there was a new build. So yeah, if you have like a Sublime Text 3 license, I would be jumping in there and playing around and getting your feet wet. But, I had the marvelous opportunity to resolve a bug in a Docker application, which is successfully running right now. It's supposed to be a WebSocket server running in Socket.io. It receives stock data over Kafka in a real-time basis, and then you can subscribe to it and get updates pushed up to your browser. And I tested out the server, the socket server part, worked great. And then I set that code to the side, started working on the Kafka integration, worked great. And then I tried to connect the two of them together. I spent 45 minutes trying to get it to get the socket client to connect to the server. Absolutely refused to connect even a little bit, even though it was very clearly running, wasn't throwing any sort of error of any sort. I had to resort to going back in time through Git to see if I had inadvertently changed things, going all the way back to the point wherein I first made that change. Still didn't work there. And then I stopped Docker, and that shut down the virtual network that it had set up for the container. Started Docker again. Worked great. So I don't know if that's a fluke, or maybe Docker instances aren't meant to run 7 consecutive days without a break. I don't know what's going on there. Was not entirely pleased by that. I mean, I eventually got it working. But don't you hate it when you spend a bunch of time debugging a thing and it doesn't work? But how's your day been, Ashwin? And we also had a question from Retro earlier, while I was actually setting up the live stream stuff and testing things. And if you don't follow me on Twitch, you might note I have a different mic now. It's attached to the right-hand side of my headset instead of the one on the left. Should sound a little bit better. Let me know if it doesn't. I can also swap it to a different mode. But the most important part about that is that I'm still not used to microphones on the right-hand side of my face. I've spent 2 years with it over here on the left, and as a result, I tend to bump into it when I'm doing stuff. So, yeah, and I think I have mentioned the old my code doesn't work and I don't know why, followed by my code works and I don't know why, or the stages of debugging that lead through this should work, this doesn't work, hey, this could never have worked, how did this ever work? Oh, there's the bug. I also have another thing going on because I have 2 methods, both with the same annotation for accepting WebSocket events, which seem to have the exact same code inside of them, except that they display a different message. One of them will, when it calls return, will return its response back to the person who made the request. The other one won't. Now, I don't know why. Nest.js is not my friend today, but we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about various Sublime Text related things. And like I said, we were going to play with LSP a little bit more because we really only touched a base on that. We do need to try to discover some sort of code base that I could use in some sort of server. So again, this is part of playing around with stuff. And again, also Retro potentially has some questions, assuming that's the name that I saw in the Discord, because I'm pretty terrible about that. The nick doesn't look the same, So perhaps not. Perhaps I am totally totally botching that one. But he seemed pretty excited to join in, so we'll see. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, Ashwin, but itty bitty 8-bit, it's totally a YouTube thing, and it is almost entirely illogical that I did not, in fact, almost push the stream button before remembering to flip the profile for YouTube and not Twitch, which would have been embarrassing as far as having a 4-second Twitch live stream before I realized what was going on. Ah, hello, cool. So I'm going to press yon button here, and I'll push it again because my fingers are dry. One button press to get us it to select the button and another one to press it. Not entirely a fan of that. So the question is, got any recommended Sublime builds for Python development? The one that I would choose by default is this one, myself. This is the one from Sublime Text 4. This should still be, this is the one that it ships with by default. Which, interestingly enough, if you caught the video yesterday, one of the things I was covering is the thing that we talked about in the Discord last week, which was that whole the problems you have running Python programs, and in particular how on some systems like Linux and Mac OS there could be a Python and a Python 3 because those two versions, Python 2 and Python 3, are not generally code compatible, and some systems have Python 2 installed with them. So when you install a newer version of Python, that theoretically could be something that I could add to YouTube, but I think I have to should look up when I say that. I have to enable channel memberships, and then anybody that's a member of the channel can have custom emotes. But yeah. This is very tempting to throw one of those in my Twitch emotes as well. But anyway, so in order to record the footage for part of that, I had to do it here on my Linux box because on Windows there's not really a Python 2 and a Python 3. There's just Python and Python. Plus the magic of these lines right here that are added into Windows. Interestingly enough, when I didn't get a chance to throw it in a card or say anything about it in the video because I didn't realize it until I was doing the final screencast recording part, which I do as a separate step. I run through everything first that I'm going to talk about, make sure I have the steps correct. I add that to a little bullet point list of things that I'm going to talk about in the different scenes. Then I record the stuff at the area in the back there, and then as the last step, I record the screencast footage that goes with it. A lot of the time. Sometimes I will record them while I'm doing things, but it's easier to get a shorter video if I talk and then fill in the screen footage afterwards, as opposed to trying to do it and talk about it, because it's kind of hard to talk and do stuff at the same time. So I discovered, yeah, this line here, this is going to make a lot of problems go away for Windows users. It's pretty fantastic. Kind of unfortunate that it stopped the thing I was trying to demonstrate in the video did not work the way that I thought it should. It should have done it in Sublime Text 3, but the Py helper gets dropped into the Windows directory to make sure that it's always on the path. So starting in Sublime Text 4, no more problems with people trying to run Python and getting weird errors about it not being on the path and not knowing how to put it on the path and all that sort of stuff. So that is going to be great. Going back to Retro's question, again, this would be my recommended build system for Python. It pretty much does everything that you need it to do. It runs Python in a pinch. If you are on Windows and you're using Python 3, and you're not using Sublime Text 4, so this doesn't do anything, then you could make a quick little modification to this, which I outlined in the video, which would be to change both of these to Python 3. You can also do this by saying something like this in front of a thing to point it at a direct place if it's not in the path, if you ever need to do something like that, but highly recommended to do it this way. That's pretty much it. The only thing that you might want to do with this, if you wanted to run an interactive Python program, this won't let you do that because Sublime doesn't let you do that. So you install the Terminus package and you say that the target is Terminus exec and the cancel key is set to Terminus cancel build, like so. And that is all you need to do to have a interactive build system using Terminus. It'll run in a little panel at the bottom of the window, which you can get to from this little thing here. I don't have one right now. And if you wanted to do something like that and you're not using my override audit package, you say view package file, you find the build you want, and that's the Python build. That's going to be this one. Then you select the entirety of this to copy it to the clipboard, and then say, we'll do it from the menu, under Tools, Build System. There's New Build System, way at the bottom. Do that, and then add in those keys that I just mentioned, and save this thing, and you're good to go. And I have already done that. I save mine as Python 3, so we can see I have done, in fact, that exact thing here. And if I did a little bit of, this is not a, this one is not an override, but it is stored in my Git directory. So I'm not entirely sure what I did there that it thinks that that's different, but switching multi to single layout. Yeah, the old this to this thing. That must be an easy key binding to hit, but oh, excellent. Do you have more questions? Because that's what we're here for. I think the video on the channel on making any build system interactive with Terminus has this as an example as well. So we said interactive Terminus. That would be this video here. If you haven't already seen it, should answer that particular, or say the exact same thing that I said here. Probably a little bit longer because it talks about using Terminus in general and how you could also have this running in a tab on the side so that you can see your code and have a larger area for the place where things are going to build. And in that regard, if I gave this the focus, the other video for that is supercharging Terminus builds in Sublime Text, which talks about how to do that, how to modify this build system slightly so that instead of opening in a panel at the bottom of the window, it'll open in a split on the side and reuse that split. So every time you run the program, keeping focus if you want to have more than one file open and that sort of thing. But yeah, the whole display of multiple columns and how to resolve that seems like a good thing to cover in general, and it still works. Hey. Speaking of that, I achieved Twitch affiliate, or I achieved a affiliate on Twitch, I should say. So if you were to follow me on Twitch and subscribe, you get brain emojis or ham emojis, depending on who you ask. I'm not an artist. There's more to come. And also, the subscriber badge is a little brain, and that's entirely because of this whole big brain time thing that we have going on here. It seems to be a theme of the channel and the streams. I kind of like that. The big brain nerd herd, as we're probably going to call ourselves over there. Over here, we're the Sublime Text fanatics. You asked something, Retro, about a playlist. What sort of playlist were you thinking of? Let's see. A playlist if I'm trying to set up my working environment. Don't really have anything about that per se. Oh, thank you. I actually already have 2 subscribers, although one of them is my wife. So if everybody in the world wants to go over there and subscribe, that'll bring things back into the red. Most of the videos that I have here on the channel thus far relate more to the things that people have the most questions about, like how key bindings work, how the configuration system in Sublime works, how build systems work, how you can make a build interactive like this. But one thing that's missing from the channel and probably could be here is some more of getting, like you say, getting started, getting your workspace set up in more ways than just deciding on your settings. Like we could go through some of the more common settings. They do indeed, yes. Here on YouTube, YouTube takes 30% of channel memberships, but YouTube is kind of a swibbity swap between Patreon and Twitch, because as a channel member, you're encouraged to have multiple tiers, and you want to add value add propositions, and I'm not sure where to go with that. Bits on Twitch go 100% to the person that you donate them to, because Twitch takes their cut of the bit money off the top. So all things being equal, that's probably a cooler way to go for something like that. But realistically, I'm not doing this sort of thing because I think I'm going to be the next ninja or whoever that's gonna, make a fat living off of YouTube videos, YouTube live streams, and Twitch live streams. I like helping people with Sublime Text. I think it's a cool hobby. I like being able to help people that have questions with things, and I like to chat and work on stuff. And if I'm assuming that based on Twitch stuff so far, people have questions about things. They like to watch software development. Maybe I teach a little something there. That's really all I'm looking for. I mean, recognition is always nice, of course. I'm not gonna say that I'm not happy that people are willing to subscribe to me on Twitch or anything like that. But I'm definitely not. I'm not assuming that I'm going to make any sort of big bank off of it. Certainly, based on all of the stuff that I've bought over time to make my YouTube videos look nicer, like the camcorder, this mic, the lights here, the light stands behind me, the desk, the lighting that goes around the closet, the way that I just bumped the microphone with my finger because I'm not used to it being in that position, and the boom is a little bit longer. If I wanted this to be some sort of commercial venture, I should probably quit my day job and just go at it, because I'm ridiculously in the hole for that stuff. But it's all about the fun of streaming, the fun of making videos, and the joy of helping people, realistically. So there's also the YouTube is potentially they have a new thing going on where they're going to have to, based on the IRS waving their finger at them, potentially withhold stuff for tax reasons. So I have to fill out some stuff related to that as well. I think I have an empty window. You might recognize this particular video or this particular content from this week's video. We can see what versions of Python I'm running. And yeah, you should totally not forget to subscribe. The bell notification icon. I have used Anaconda briefly, but not a ton. And mostly the reason that I used it is because someone was asking questions about it on Stack Overflow. So I installed it to get a sense for what it was. There's a couple of problems that they were having with it. I have never used Kite. I have objections to the company that did it. But also, I'm not super hep on code intelligence tools as a general rule, because I'm a fuddy-duddy that was programming back before they were a thing. I'm not sure what the deal is with Kite currently. I know way back when they first came out, they were doing some kind of sketchy things, like finding Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code plugins that were very popular in the community and buying them off of the people that were maintaining them, allegedly, according to stuff that I read. Anyway, I never really looked that much into it. And then they would inject advertising and analytics, because those packages were very heavily used, and then they'd start skewing things. People took a dislike to that, but they still seem to be around. So I would probably go at this point if you want some sort of code intelligence thing. I would go with LSP for something like that myself. I think there are some other, depending on the languages that you're using, there's probably some other packages that provide a little bit of stuff, but by and large, I would probably say LSP is the best way to go for something like that. And when it comes to linting, like PEP 8 and stuff, probably Sublime Linter is the way to go for something like that. Speaking of things that should probably be covered on the channel. Hello, Samshwar. How's your day going so far today? I have my reservations about AI in general. I think the thing that bothers me most about Kite is the way that their AI required you to ship the data up to them and then give the response back. Not that I'm not working on anything that's so secret and convoluted that I don't want anybody to know the answer. It just seems like it would be slow making a round trip, whereas on LSP, it's still talking to a server, but it's right on your system and it's making your life a little bit nicer. Speaking of, uh, is there not an easy way to install? Ah, yes. I know enough to be dangerous. That's definitely true. As we discovered in a previous stream, I am 47 years old, but I still don't know my age without doing that particular bit of mathematics there. I've been fiddling with computers and coding them and on them and stuff in a variety of languages since I was 10. So at some level I know a lot, and at some other level there's probably tons and tons of stuff that I've just never encountered. But yeah, exactly, right? I think that combined with the cryptography thing and the way that they were gathering data surreptitiously, like I think that was the thing where they had sidebar enhanced, I think, was one of the packages that yeah, I should set up a key binding for that, shouldn't I? Yeah, me as well. I've the new autocomplete. Well, I mean, I even really found the old autocomplete pretty much did anything that I might want. I think what's cool about the new one is how it can draw from files that aren't currently open. I think that is like super boss. Advice for 20-year-olds: enjoy your youth. That's probably one. Uh, Eat a lot of delicious foods before you discover how bad they are for you, because when you get older and you have to change your diet, you'll look back fondly on the days that you could eat a pizza and stay up late. But in general, if you're asking for computer advice, be inquisitive and try stuff was probably my biggest mantra. I've discussed in a lot of streams previously that all of the stuff that I know and well, most of the stuff that I know I sort of taught myself, because I from the age of 10 onward until I eventually got old enough to go to college, I was constantly looking for new stuff to learn and do. So I had to teach myself how to write code in Pascal. Using that knowledge, I taught myself to write code in C, which was pretty easy because it's the same stuff that you already know. You just use different symbols in order to create stuff. And then I just sort of looked for things like you might say, I said, I guess a good way to say this is anytime I would see a thing, I would be very inquisitive and curious about how that thing was done. So I might like play Tetris, and while I'm playing it, I'm thinking in my head, how are they doing this? How do they know where these blocks stop. How do they make them all fall down? And then I would go and experiment and play around and try to come up with something like that. And I just kept doing that over and over for games, for software, for just little ideas. And you find after you've done it enough that a lot of problems kind of boil down to the same key points. And it's really all about honing the ability to break down a problem into small enough parts to be able to solve it. And a lot of those parts will come more naturally, how they should work or what they should do, or at least a general overview of what you think is probably the right way to do it or a way to do it, if you have more practice with something like that. You hate pizza? Oh man. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's okay to hate pizza. What do you like instead of pizza? To be honest, there's a lot of stuff that I used to be all like, I could take it, I could leave it. And now that I'm not allowed to eat it because of the restricted diet that I'm on, I'm like, I want that so bad. Except for mashed potatoes. I still don't care about mashed potatoes. My preferred way of passing command line arguments to the build? Generally speaking, whenever I'm doing something that is build related, I'm not sure I have the arguments that I might need for something. Generally, I don't even think I have too many custom builds here. Would be something that's just always the same every time. For example, if I was working with .NET, the arguments that I would be providing to this are just these three things. I don't do a lot of coding. I guess you're asking like if you wanted to run a program you're building and add command line arguments to it, I would probably just write a simple plugin that uses the input panel at the bottom of the window to ask you for set arguments. I think there's probably something on package control that does that too, but I've never actually looked. For that purpose, I use this. What I do for this. I use Sublime Merge. I use Sublime Text. Sublime Merge videos coming to the channel at some point. I need to feel more comfortable with telling people or teaching people the basics of Git. But basically, if I'm working on something, for example, my override audit package that is controlled by Git, then I use the sidebar to let me know when files are changed, and I would just jump into Sublime Merge. I actually have a button for it up here to be able to start it as well, but I tend to do it from the command palette as well. But as Ben mentions, if you need to pass arguments, there's a few things you could do. I mean, you could use Terminus if you have Terminus set up to run something. You could open it in an external terminal. You could just like have command prompt open, run your thing in there. I have videos on the channel on how to create a build system that opens a custom or a command prompt or a terminal, depending on which operating system you're on. So you could run it in there. You could do it manually. You could, as Ashwin said, you can also click on yaw to take you to there directly. Not something I do a ton. I tend more to, realistically, I tend to do this more even than going up there and clicking that a lot of the time, weirdly. Particularly if I guess because this is going to open merge in whatever state it was in last. Whereas if I was over, and that's, clearly got my user package and override audit. But if I was working on, say, the hyperhelp package, which I guess is going to have to change now, then I'd use open repo on that to open it, because otherwise I'd have to navigate to it manually. Well, hello, Hacky Sack. You arrived. You're not going to fall asleep, are you? To be honest, I'm not even sure what part of the world that you're in. Are you a Europeaner, or are you an East Coaster? Is it super late for you right now, or Is it early afternoon? Tell us everything. And how's your day been? Ohio. Ah, you're really close to where my wife is from. My wife is from Wisconsin. I stole her away from the land of cheese to bring her to the land of maple syrup. We have cheese here, but not quite as much. But she doesn't begrudge me that too much. Hmm. Third shifter. Ah. As a mid-level coder, it's intimidating that there's so much to learn on the internet and so many resources. What should we focus on? What are the important programming skills? Personally, I would say problem solving. I've noticed that if you zoop around on Stack Overflow a bunch, you can see that there's a lot of people, and this actually could maybe be a good exercise. If you go to Stack Overflow and look at a problem that someone's having, you might see them just say, I tried to run a Python program and I got an error message. What's the problem here? Which is good. That's like, you have a problem and you're asking. But a better way to get an answer to a question like that is to also outline the things that you researched in order to do it. So being able to do that, now, as you said, there's like a lot of information that's out there, but I probably would focus more on the problem solving investigativeness of one particular thing that you're working on. Try building something, try replicating something simple that you've seen other people do. I mean, this is one of those things in programming, we always want to say don't reinvent the wheel. There's a library for that. I've noticed that for the time that I've been working with Node.js, that a lot of my coworkers are really struggling with coming to terms with writing code for the first time in JavaScript and TypeScript because they're new to that, and their focus is always on trying to find some library somewhere that they can plug into their code to do some simple thing that they want to do, which is good, and you want to do that, but you want to be able to understand what those things are actually doing as well, if that makes sense, because you can't debug something if you don't know how it works, so you need to have a little bit of information about that. But that's why over on Twitch, one of the first things that I did in my streams there was say, I want to create my own overlays here in the chat, which, as we can say here, if we run the command, you type that, and eventually, with any luck, something happens. Or maybe it doesn't work when I say it. I'm not entirely sure. Nightbot seems to be kind of pokey sometimes, but I know that it worked for... there we go. That's just got a little bit of a... Is the latency all crap again? Because I thought that it had done up. But in any case, I wanted to do that thing that just happened now for me, even though you probably already saw it. I wanted to be able to do that. Now, there's software to do that very thing, and there's pre-made solutions where you don't even have to run any software, like Stream Elements, for example. But I wanted to make my own, and I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to just investigate what's involved in this. So we played around a little bit. We did some experimentation. I'm going to need a web page, I guess. It's going to have to talk to something else to be able to know when someone runs something. I'm pointing at the chat like you can see that monitor. And then I just sort of played with that for a little bit. And then we got that working. We got that brain working. So cool. So now we have that. Now I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to start using this actual software that's already done that part for me. But now I understand better how that stuff works behind the scenes, right? Which seems like a cool way to go. And I always come back to the idea of game development. People that want to get into game development want to jump immediately into Unity and use it to create, Doom or Portal or some big game right off the bat, which is a bad idea because the first few things you work on when you're learning how to do game development they're just gonna not be good because you're still learning, right? But you gain that reliance on using Unity to do all of the stuff, and then if you have a problem like things aren't drawing fast enough, you don't really know enough about what Unity was doing for you to be able to determine what the problem is, which goes back to something I probably said a minute ago. So uh, I I would just recommend being super inquisitive. Cool bot indeed. Yeah, it's in theory the bot's gonna do more. Nightbot's not one that I created. That's a standard community thing. And for YouTube, Nightbot's probably going to be where it's at. But over on Twitch, I have Obot Nerd, which we're going to build up into the world's greatest bot, or at least some moderate clone of Nightbot. Yeah, exactly. Like I am absolutely awful for reinventing the wheel. I gotta say, anytime anybody on the forum asks a question, my first thought is I could create a plugin for that, and then I go and write it, and then I realize, you know what? Probably should have just checked package control because there's probably already a package that does this. But now I know more about how to do it, right? So. Hey, no problem. Thanks for joining the chat. If you have any more questions, feel free to shout them out. Exactly. Yeah. There, don't get too bogged down in learning one specific thing because the skills are pretty transferable. Like I mentioned before, once you know one programming language, the world opens up to you because now for the first time you can make a computer do what you want it to do. But also switching from Pascal to C, or from C to C++, or from Pascal to C++, or tons of other languages, they're going to be real similar. You're just going to use slightly different words to describe what you want to do. But at the core of it, you still have the series of steps that you need to take out in a particular order. That's the part you want to focus in on learning, and then everything else just gets better. But yeah. Totally a rabbit hole, I will admit. It's been, I guess, 37 years and I'm still interested in playing around with stuff. And now I'm doing it on the internet too. So, yeah. I'm kind of worried about the work that's going to have to potentially go into HyperHelp to be able to do stuff. And also moderately so all of the documentation changes that have happened that aren't in Snappy yet, and I'm already behind with other changes that I put in here that I haven't actually pushed up yet. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to do. There might be some weird weekend Twitch streams where I'm just transferring documentation for nobody watching just because I can. Yeah, that is, you decide, oh. What's that you're guilty of, hacky sack? Getting sidetracked by making the module? I know that you spend a lot of time doing optimization stuff too. That's part of the competition stuff that you do, right? Trying to come up with better solutions or the fastest solution to a thing. Simply learning the whole stack up from digital circuits and logic gates. Ooh, yeah. I mean, that's totally a thing. I've probably mentioned ad nauseum. My two loves were electronics and software development, and I ended up going the software development route. But I still miss the old days of building radios and stuff. Well, thank you very much, Garish, and welcome to the stream. How's your day been going so far? Ooh. It's been going pretty well. The weather was quite nice. Had some problems with some code at work, but I know a lot more about WebSocket stuff than I did before, so that's always good. On the continuing train of figuring out stuff that I'm doing. But I feel like, I've been doing stuff for so long that I remember writing code back on my IBM PC 8088 processor with the tape drive. Could have had a tape drive. I had two gigantic 10 megabyte hard drives and two 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. And at the time, if you wanted to do anything fast, you had to write like some really tight code like maybe even drop into assembler for stuff. And nowadays computers are so fast that we can write our code in JavaScript and have a program interpret our program and try to run it in real time. So things have come a long way, but knowing how things work at the lowest level, like Ben said, is definitely a good way to get a handle on stuff. Hey, oh, you're gonna be doing some class, huh? Oh, OS lab, like operating systems. That takes me back to college. We had to do. I had a weird mix of classes in college. We had to do. We learned how to write code in Pascal, Python, or not Python, C, and COBOL with its appropriate job control language for the mainframe. But then we also had to take accounting classes and marketing classes and business classes. And then we dove into more concrete things like data communications and operating system concepts and design. Good times. There's a reason why ODAT nerd is the nickname. I like to say I'm one of those people that likes to read the manual for things to see what it can do. For example, I got this new headset mic. Mod Mic Wireless, by the way, works amazingly well. Even under Linux, zero setup, sounds good. It would be cooler if I didn't have a wired headset, then I could be completely free. But while I was waiting for it to arrive, I was finding all the manuals for it that I could just to see what it could do. Nerdy Nerdingsons. How we doing here? So yeah, one of the things that I said I was going to look at potentially while we're chatting here is LSP. And let's see if I can find a thing here. Now I do have it installed here, but the only server that I have installed is Lua, and that's one of the ones that we had to build ourselves. And I'm thinking of, one of the things we want to do on the channel is videos, probably a series of videos, as we learned last week, on LSP. What is LSP? Why would you use it? How do you set this thing up for a few different languages? So we should probably play with that a little bit more, because I don't tend to use this sort of thing super often, but that is a Yon package. You see, it's moderately popular with its 11,000 or 335,000 installs going on. My package cracked 1,000, so I'm doing pretty good. I'm very niched down though. Interesting that this mentions this, I would say. Now, again, if you're unfamiliar with LSP, we could probably talk about that here. LSP stands for Language Server Protocol, and this is software that is what Visual Studio Code uses behind the scenes, and other tools too, to provide code intelligence like completions and things of that nature by having a piece of software called the language server, whose job it is to understand your code in a way that Sublime doesn't, because Sublime is more generically meant for any and all type of file and coding language, whereas in order to know something specific about TypeScript, you really need to know and dial in code for that. And so you can run one of these language servers, but you need something inside of your editor to be able to talk to it back and forth to ship off the files and commands and get information back. And that's what the LSP package does. It's one of the more popular things that people ask questions about, but I don't really use it myself, so we're going to experiment with that. And is it just me, or is the line spacing in this animated GIF ridiculously wide? That seems like a lot of extra padding. Still hanging out in the stream. I mean, all else being equal, while I was busy working, I had 2 Twitch streams going over on my other monitor here while I was doing stuff. So I should say you should totally be in class and concentrating on stuff, but I would totally be lying. Double-spaced 14-point font. Do you use LSP, Hacky Sack? I am, yeah. So we could actually even play with this in a sandbox version. Hello, Rahul. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. We're having a good time tonight. Pretty good considering that I totally forgot to press the magic button on this thing. Something I've been trying to do, I mean, this is only the the second stream here on this channel, is it's been my habit to make the stream public on the alternate channel a few hours or the day of the stream. Probably partially contributes to why viewership was not super hot. Plus, I don't have as many subscribers on my other channel because I'm terrible about self-promoting myself. But I noticed that having the stream ahead of time allows more people to see it and to know about it. So I had stuff all set up so that Sunday, while I'm finalizing the video for Monday, I can go and flick the switch from unlisted to public to make the next live stream available to people so that they'll know that it's happening. But I completely forgot to do that until this morning when I realized it, and then I still managed to not click save. But I do have a calendar thing now to remind me to do that. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, back in the olden days when ODAT Nerd was in college, that wasn't the thing you did. But probably a lot of the reason for that was there wasn't really any way to do something like that. We didn't have iPhones and such. We had Nokia flip phones. Where you would very excitedly spend seven minutes getting on the internet to look at a tiny little box of text to see a little message, and then it cost you $14. We've come a long way. Yeah, so there's like a lot of stuff that needs to happen in here. Let's go ahead and maybe do the setup for this again now, or not. I thought that there was a list of language servers that there's helpers for in here, but it doesn't seem to list them here that I can see, unless it's just in the documentation as a whole. Let's see. So I'm betting maybe they just show up in this list. Maybe there actually is a easier one to use for Lua than the one that we went to all the trouble of installing. I think for me, the failing, and I use that term incredibly loosely for LSP, is in how for this currently you need to install some of the servers yourself, whereas it's a bit more of a seamless experience for like Visual Studio Code. But I know they're working on that, and I think that's gonna really make all the difference for this sort of thing. So we could get code for Pyrite. That would be Python, right? There are some really targeted language services in here. I don't need a Spanish language thing, but let's do that. Various things that are convenience plugin for. Now, some of these you have to wonder if you actually have to install things yourself to go with. I don't do a lot of CSS type stuff. Docker, Elixir, Elm. ESLint support. Schema validation completions. All of these are coming from the one thing. Now, are these Pyrite and Pyrite? Nice. Multiple things with the same name. And I think that is more or less the list of easily had ones. And we sort of played a little bit with the Python one, and I managed to break it in like the first 2 minutes by doing a code refactor and then pushing undo. Um, that was sort of an unfortunate turn of events. Let's see, there's not a... What does this one actually do? Let's see. Ah, my eyes. Oh, I see. It's like that, is it? Also, GitHub has totally forgot that I'm signed in, which is an unfortunate turn of events. So let's see. Install LSP and LSP HTML and restart Sublime. All right, so it does all of the work for you. I know that, yeah, I think I don't follow the LSP channel in the Discord, mostly because I don't use it. So I should probably start following along with stuff in there because I'm sure there's a ton of great information in there for this sort of stuff. But I seem to recall that they're working towards making it easier to install this stuff, right? And another server I advocated for and assist others with. Apparently I talk about it so often that I was called an ST representative lobbyist PR person. Hey, you should be calling yourself a Sublime Text fanatic. You don't even have to provide any royalties for me for saying that. Welcome to the club as well. Have you by any chance directed anybody here to the channel for additional information? Because, apart from having something in my eye, I've noticed that my subscribership is growing quite handily. Hey, Jack, welcome to the stream. Only for formatting? That is, yeah, let me see here. No. Shoot, do I not have? Oh, it's gonna be under here, isn't it? Yes, it is. Various, the code to my illustrious Sublime squad. Yeah. So I said over here on YouTube, where we are the Sublime Text fanatics, and then and over on Twitch, it's the Nerd Herd because I do everything and not just Sublime Text stuff. Although I still use Sublime for my editor. Pondering the idea of channel point redemption that forces me to use Visual Studio Code for 15 minutes or something, since gamers like to have one for making you swap hands on controls. So that seems like the programming equivalent, right? Making me use Visual Studio Code and get all confused because things aren't in the place that I expect. Well, they don't know what they're missing, do they? Okay, let's install LSP HTML and see what it can do. Because I'm not entirely sure, to be perfectly honest. Come on, man, you just loaded the repositories. Why you gotta load them repositories again? My internet. LSP HTML. All right. We're installed. We're initializing. It did some stuff down there, and it looks like it's actually running. Just because it says to restart Sublime, I'm going to do that because I follow the documentation. Okay, so now what? It's definitely running. We can tell, right? Because it's got that little text down here. So what does this thing provide for me? Not hover pop-ups for something like that. This is the other problem with creating a video for LSP. I'm not entirely sure what it's even going to do at any given point. Is there commands in the command palette, Jack? Since this is what you use it for? Oh. I could be fixing this. There. See if I ever remember to update this at some point. The documentation for this doesn't necessarily say... Oh, I guess we have to follow the link. Oh, that's... That's less information than I expected to see for something. Oh, I can click a thing. Okay. I'll click another link to see what it's doing. I don't think I've ever successfully got anybody to come into the Sublime Discord either. Although my wife almost did while we were testing something the other day when someone in the forum asked if the Discord link was like expired or not accepting invitations, and it worked for me, but I was already logged in, so I got her to click on it too, and it seemed to work for her. But she declined to join what she refers to colloquially as the nerd chat. Hover on a tag name or attribute name. Oh, all right. I see. Yeah, that doesn't seem super helpful. I can rename all of the href. Does that make sense? Maybe, oh, but it's LSP HTML, so it probably doesn't have information about CSS, does it? Because that's the part where it would be super boss to know a little bit about things here. Is there a, oops. Is there a CSS? There must be, right? Like Ben, I pretty much just used the built-in autocomplete. In fact, I think I'm not even, I know that it's gotten better, but I think it's better in a way that was so seamless that it's just working better for me, and I can't quite put my finger on exactly what's different about it. LSP CSS. Let's get ourselves some CSS action, because if there's a thing that I need help with, it's this. Okay, well, that totally did something. That's kind of cool, I suppose, although Faceless User's Color Helper package probably does a similar thing to that, right? And these are unhappy because, yeah. This is where the first thing that I would do would be to see if there's something in the configuration what would allow it to not harass me about that sort of thing. This is kind of nice, probably. I wouldn't use. There was a discussion about this in the Discord the other day, and Will's position was that he prefers the built-in stuff to something like an autocomplete that just gives you the symbols that you need to complete because it makes you read the code and understand it better. And I hear him on FM on that because we work in a very large code base that you have to be very familiar with, in which case I wouldn't get a lot of use out of something like that. But I definitely think that being familiar with your code is a good thing to do. Maybe that's because we are 50% writing new features and 50% maintaining existing code. And I assume that's probably the same for everybody. Maybe the balances are a little different, but once you spend any amount of time having to go back over code that you wrote 6 months or a year ago, you start becoming intimately familiar with the code and having some pretty good code habits, in which case these tools perhaps don't help as much as they technically could. I'm not entirely sure. Something like this, I could see being useful. Where are the references to this? And if they're just here in this, I mean, it would be nice if this worked the other way. Like hovering over one of the classes in the class tag would allow me to go to the place where the CSS was located instead of just inside of the one file. But I could see that being not too terrible. Now, does this provide commands in the nothing specific to a particular thing, huh? Is there a menu under here that perhaps There we go. Enable, disable, troubleshoot. So I'm imagining that we want something over here. Whoops. My bad. There we go. Language, scope, syntaxes. Alrighty. So here we have linter settings, right? Yeah, I'm not denying that code intelligence is a useful tool, but it's, excuse you, Snorri puppy. It's one of those things that's kind of like when someone just says, hey, I'm writing code in Python. What packages should I use for that? And someone says, I use Anaconda. And then a person says, oh, okay. And then they install Anaconda. And then they're confused because it's linting their code and they didn't expect that. Or it's trying to run a version of Python that they haven't configured and they didn't expect that. You sort of want to know how stuff works in general, and if you rely too much on automated tools to give you the information without having the understanding, it's kind of, it worries me that people are focusing on the wrong things, if that makes any sense. Having said that, though, while I generally don't use a ton of IDE features, I did for a while, and then I found Sublime and found that I like it much better. It's closer to my old-timey roots, if you will. When it comes to Java, I consider Java one of those languages where, yeah, you want an IDE of some sort, probably. Not that you can't use Sublime for that, but there's just such a minutia of stuff to configure that it seems like it would be a real bear for a lot of purposes. Then you got that whole, tons of empty folders in the sidebar maybe, and yeah. Fortunately, I don't do a lot of Java stuff. Let's look here. Where's that file I just had open? CSS vendor prefix. So it seems to be providing me some sort of linter warning because I didn't specify transition. I only specified these. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't actually specify these because I'm a doof when it comes to CSS. So as you can see, I got this from somewhere else. But that said, CSS vendor prefix is the thing, according to that. So theoretically, if this is LSP CSX, then I guess this is what I want over here. Now, do I have to copy this entire thing over? I suppose I do, because that's how configuration in Sublime works, right? Hello, Robert. Yeah, Ashwin has mentioned doing that as well in the Sublime console for looking at the contents of stuff. Historically, because I do a lot of plugin development here on the channel, I tend to go for looking, or not even for that, but doing something like to be able to see the stuff. I tend to do this. Oh, that's a little excessively large. And then it opens in here. But I find that sometimes if it's a case where I just need to see the name to remind me what it is, then I could use the dir method. But Python is, although I've been writing code in it for like 4 years, as I've mentioned, I really never really used Python until I started using Sublime Text, and that's the language that you need to use to write plugins. So I learned Python for that. So anything about Python that Sublime would normally do for you, like opening a file or saving a file, or working with paths, in a lot of cases, is one of those things that I'm not super strong on because I've never really done a lot of it. So I find that I need to come in here anyway to remind myself of, say, like the arguments that a thing might take, which I guess in standard Python you could actually, there's like a help function, right? Whoops, that's not the right thing. Like you could say help, like OS or something, but that's not defined here. Let's do this. Well, that's an unfortunate turn of events. I'll just do this. But I'm not sure if this is smart enough to just allow you to provide the subset here and it would blend it with those. But I'm assuming that I could set this to ignore and then that problem goes away. So that's pretty cool. That actually happened quite fast there as well. So they've really put a lot of work into this thing. I think that LSP is the poster child for some of the great new development that's happened in Sublime Text 4 and its ability. I don't know if this is actually true or not, and if Ben's still here, maybe he could speak to that. But sometimes I get the feeling that based on all of the work that's gone into Sublime Text 4 builds in the last year, and how when they were initially announced and John asked that we keep everything in the Discord and not share the links out because he wasn't ready for it to be made publicly available yet, that his expectation was that it would probably be a couple of weeks before the builds became publicly available. And clearly it's been a little bit over a year at this point, maybe 14 months. I've already established I'm bad at math. But there was a lot of effort in adding things to the API and augmenting things that had been added to make packages like LSP work better. There's stuff in here that wasn't in the original API that LSP can use to do a lot of its cool stuff a lot easier and better. So I tend to think that maybe part of the reason why these builds have gone on so long is because the development of those extra features for this and other stuff that they were planning on doing anyway really just sort of took off for adding extra support for stuff, which is like really great. It's going to be weird when this actually is publicly available. Hopefully we still get notifications of builds in the Discord, because we're getting those now for Sublime Merge as well, right? And it's fun to wake up and notice that there's a little red dot next to the announcements channel if you've ever hung out in the Discord. That's cool. Now, okay, here we go. Here's the thing. So we can do potentially, okay, this doesn't have some sort of format type option, which is maybe unfortunate. But this does. So because this is in Git, let's see what the default does if I do this. So we say LSP format file. And so what changed realistically? Let's see. I didn't have the body of the HTML tag indented. Okay. So more or less. Whoa, what happened here? Oh, these things were all made on one big long line. I getcha. They were on one big line, and now they are not, or vice versa. Yeah, it totally split those two around. Whoa. When you reformat your file and you see like a lot of easy peasy, you remind me of my friend Red Jar of Jam, whose claim to fame is, well, being humble, being a cool artist, and saying easy. But he doesn't add the peasy onto the end of it. But is it mildly disconcerting to reformat a file and notice that there's large swatches of what appears to be red deleted stuff? Where did this part go? It's way down here now. I see. Okay. One of those situations where, is there a setting for what diff it uses? There's not, is there? Like the patience diff versus the other thing. No, there's not. It's one of those situations where how that all works gets a little sketchy. What were you thinking of writing a plugin for? Fixing the auto formatting? I mean, I'm all over writing plugins just in the general case. Reinvent that wheel. Re-implement that command. Why install chain of command when I can write a plugin that is the one command that is chain of command? Which I guess is maybe cool because I sync my user package so I automatically get it everywhere. Let's see what else we can do. Let us, that is not the thing that we're looking for. Zoop out of there. And let us just go ahead and go, well, I guess that's probably the easiest way to go, to put that back to the way that it was. Yeah. Speaking of, if we were to, I keep my, oh, yeah, I closed that, didn't I? My user package for text and merge, and I currently have 35 unstaged changes for things, and that is as to nothing for the list of untracked files. Each one of which is something that I did in response to someone asking a question on the forum or Stack Overflow or something. I write the plugin, and then one day they're going to get into the scraps repository. Maybe that could be a stream. That could totally be a stream. That's coding related. Should pencil that in. And totally slam Keith with 100 PRs all in one shot. He'll wake up one morning and take his tablet out and his email client will explode. I'm not sure why that's there, but we'll just leave well enough alone for that one. Oh, something that I was saying earlier that I sort of got off track because somebody else asked a question. Videos that I have on the channel right now are related to the questions that people commonly ask on how to set things up, like key binding settings, builds, stuff like that. But I don't have a lot of videos on just using Sublime in general. I know it is, isn't it? So that is something that has been on my mind for a while because most of the videos assume that you know how to use Sublime already, but maybe you want to know how to add multiple cursors or how to use Control D to skip things or how to skip over one and go to the next. I want this one and this one, but not this one. But we'll go on to the next one, and then you have the 3 and all that sort of stuff. Isn't stuff that I actually cover on the channel, but that's sort of kinda in the common questions, but not really super common. But I have seen them asked. So if anybody has suggestions on the sorts of things that you discovered about Sublime that were cool that you didn't know about, or that you wished you had known about sooner, you should drop those down in the chat here and guide those particular videos. Because it's one of those situations where partly I didn't do it to begin with because those weren't the questions that people were asking, and partly because I wanted to provide more usage tips and less, so here's this piece of software that you probably, I've always sort of worked from the assumption that you use Sublime and there's just this thing that you have a question about. But also, I'm not sure what to put in these because there's a lot of stuff that I do that I just sort of do by muscle memory that I wouldn't think of to actually say something about. So I definitely need up in that area there, if you have any suggestions for stuff like that, like Ashwin mentioned the question people have about window layouts, and that one I very rarely use this particular one. And adding in your own, which I have a key binding for, and I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head what it actually is. Alt-Shift-N. See, I added a key binding for that. That is not the key that I should have pushed. This is the key that I should have pushed because I use this particular layout particularly often. So that's like one thing. I've already done how to manipulate the layout with origami, but this is totally possible without origami, right? You can even add multiple columns and have it start splitting into rows automatically. So I would totally love some suggestions for things like that and any other video topics, obviously. If it's this, again with the, did I turn off caching for the package repository, or is it just ridiculously changing? Let's which is better, Pyrite or Pyrite? We need to install one of them, and I'm not sure which one is the cooler one. But one of the things that I commonly come back to that blew people's minds is there's a menu down here that you can use to open panels, which there was a guy who was like, I've been using Sublime for 7 years. The what now? I've never known that was a thing. And certainly it's not super discoverable, but I'm not even sure where I discovered about that. Environment variables that are accessible from the terminal you build code to, if you build your code to an external terminal. This is the Sublime Text 4, yes indeed. This is the new default color scheme, which is Mariana instead of Monakai. I've made it 3% darker than it normally is because otherwise, to my eyes, it doesn't quite contrast enough and looks a little bit washed out. And this is the adaptive theme with the new rounded tab style, but of course you can adjust that to be square, round, or the old angled tabs, and you could use other themes as well. And also, welcome to the stream if you didn't already say something, and I didn't already say it, because the chat was going pretty furious there for a little bit at the beginning of the stream. But indeed, this is. Ouch. Pardon me. This is Sublime 4. It's got a lot of cool new features, new autocomplete stuff. The symbol list, for example, has some new things in it. We can have this information that tells you what the different types of things are. You can see what language they came from, like all of these things here, which can make your life a little bit easier when there are multiple, pardon me, multiple things. Autocomplete has new action here. For example, we can do the same thing here. We can tell that this is a snippet. If I was to say new plugin, and fire this up, we also have the ability to do this sort of thing here. So because this is a plugin, the autocomplete, which this isn't something that's built into Sublime, by the way. This is something that I worked on in one of my previous live streams. We have the ability to know exactly what these things are for, what they're named, what they represent, and information down here. This one is a method. That's why it's got an M, whereas these ones are classes and so on. So there's a lot of cool new features in here, and mildly overwhelming to just sit down and come up with a video that's just about Sublime Text 4 changes. That's why I'm trying to come up with things that are questions people have or problems people have and how to solve them, but also how in Sublime 4 they're no longer a problem, although this week's video, that one was sort of an afterthought accident for things. There are users that know. Yeah, indeed. Right now, arguably, as long as you can do what you want to do, you're good to go, and you have the knowledge that you need. But there's always that niggling thing, like maybe there's another way to do this that I was unfamiliar with, and in which case having this extra information could maybe tell you how to do something a little bit faster than you might have done it before. And there's a lot of things that I could improve with myself there. Like if I wanted to copy this big long function, I could grab it like this to copy it and then paste it, right? Okay, you close that without saving. Or if it's exceptionally long, I'll just do this and fold it up first, and then it pastes, which makes that a lot faster than trying to select the whole thing, particularly if you're using the mouse. But of course, you can fold things with the keyboard, and you can expand the selection to the same indent level. So in some file types, I could be doing this even faster with key bindings. But those are ones that I don't use often enough that I end up using the mouse for a lot of the time. Or if I decide to use the keyboard bindings for it, I don't quite know them enough, and then it ends up taking me longer to go, nope, not that one, not that one. That's the one I meant. I could have just used the mouse. There's always room for improvement. But, by the way, shout out for, let me click the button here. If you are not in the Sublime Text Discord, and you didn't see me mention this in the off-topic channel earlier today, but if you are new to Git or you want to learn more about it, this seems like a fun little completely free game to learn that with. It just happens to be in a tab over there. Oh My Git. I played with it for a little bit, and we can see here it provides you, it's written in the Godot programming engine, or programming, game engine, sorry. It actually uses Git behind the scenes. It's actually the game engine driving Git in a temporary directory, and it sets you little puzzles with the idea that Git's a time machine, because that's what it is. So there are I guess that was in a different spot here. It provides you these little cards you can click and drag up into the thing to play a particular command. If you're unfamiliar with how to check things out, then you could use the git checkout and drag, and you can see the little space squirrel, I think it was, showing you how things go and how things merge and how that makes the tree work. But it also shows you what Git commands you would use, and you can actually do the thing in Git. I only played with it for about 15 minutes this morning before a meeting. Would recommend. Kind of tempted to play through this on a Twitch stream. The problems in it were very open-ended, but I mention this because one of the things I want to do on the channel is Sublime merge videos, and I'm guessing based on questions that people have asked that to some degree people want to know things about how to use it, like how you can click on these eye icons to hide or show certain things in here, and you can alt click to highlight that one and automatically hide everything else, and other things like that. I better put that back before something untoward happens. But what a lot of people want to know, or what makes it easier to describe these things, is talking about Git in general and the graph and what a commit hash is and what a tree is and why it has these files in it and what parents are and what merges are and what references and tags are and all of that stuff, which is something that, I mean, I'm not a Git expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I get by. I can do the stuff. There's certain arbitrary commands that you have to run so infrequently that I usually have to search to see how exactly do I do this again, and then invariably I always come to the same Stack Overflow that I found 8 months ago, the last time I did it. But I was thinking that playing through this and seeing how this is describing it might make me, provide hints for a way to describe and explain how Git's working behind the scenes, which I think is what people want out of some videos there as well. So that's why I've kept this open. My coworker actually found this thing. I'm the only one on my team that uses Git on a regular basis. They've all been using other tools like Subversion or God help us, Visual Source Safe for a long time before they moved to TFS. But so they're a little out of their depth with Git stuff as well. So I really have a vested interest in creating training for that. So along with, up there, ideas for videos, and Ashwin's provided a few already. Do you use Git? Is there parts of it that you found confusing? Let me know that stuff too. Support from the community in the form of questions that you ask here in the chat, or comments you make in the chat, comments you make on videos, on Twitter, in DMs, on the Discord, and on YouTube and stuff like that. Well, I guess there's not really DMs on YouTube, is there? I mean, I guess there kind of is. They're so secret that YouTube doesn't tell me about them half the time. That really drives what happens on the channel, that and people asking questions in general. So you guys are what makes this thing totally possible. Give me some fodder. Let me know what you're having problems with. What were we going to do? We were going to install one of these things. And whoops. Boy, this thing really wants to load repositories today. I think there's a slight possibility that I might have configured package control to not cache things or something. Now I got a little Git tree animation going off to the side there. Let me scroll that up a little bit. And what do you think about playing through Oh My Git on Twitch? That seems like it might be a fun thing to do. Maybe I'll do an extra stream. Give this the focus. We're going to install LSP, Microsoft Pyrite, and Polymer and Web Components. That one's 2017. This one actually has a version. Is one of these better than the other? Oh, you know what? I wonder if it has something to do with the stuff that Will was talking about. Crosscode instead. That's also tempting. It's severely tempting, and I don't know if I have it. To play through. Um, can't think of the name now. Shoot, Zachtronics game, Space Chem, uh, and Tis 100 and stuff. Cause hey, programming thing. This is a game that I mentioned to Hacky Sack, if he's still watching, as someone that likes to optimize routines and try to make them as fast as possible. You would probably sink into the world of Zachtronics games, potentially never to escape, because that is what they're all about. In fact, they all encourage you on a global leaderboard scale to achieve two things: do something in the fastest possible time, or the least number of system cycles, depending on the game. And there's also one for the using the least number of components, like factory symbols or program statements. And often those two things are completely incompatible with each other. There's the way that's 3 lines of code but runs slow, and then there's the way that's 35 lines of code that runs blazingly fast. So you get to work on it both sides. Do I understand the inner workings of Sublime Text? To some degree. As far as the interface that plugins have to the core, yes. Ben probably knows, well, I would hope Ben knows way more about that than I do. I don't understand fully what, data structures it uses to store the stuff, the content of the file, which is, because that's proprietary stuff. I think some hints have been provided, but I like to think I know a fair amount about how this sort of thing works. Mind-numbing puzzles. Mind-numbing puzzles, you say, huh? The polymer one just appears to be a collection of snippets. Oh, shoot, the panel closed. Oops. Install package. Hopefully, yeah. LSP. Python support for Sublime's LSP plugin provided through Microsoft, and JavaScript support for. Oh, that's TypeScript. Oh, sorry. Right. Right. Was there not another one? Am I on crack now? I thought there was Pyrite and Pyrite, and it was spelled a different way. Man, now I'm just confused. Yeah. Ben has the ability to actually peek into the source code. Some of the best things to happen on the Sublime Text Discord are when we start asking questions, and Ben or Will or John dip into the code to provide some insights into how particular things work, which is, why I think it's cool to hang out in there. I get to help people, get to hang out with other like-minded people. Sometimes, you have a sense of, if I had to guess, this works like blah, or if I had to guess, this works like this because of blah, and then they can chime in and say whether you're right or not. Let's say Microsoft knows where it's at for stuff. Look at that linter being all unhappy with my thing. This is why I have a problem with linters, people. It's not allowed. It must be allowed because it actually works, and I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing, to be perfectly honest. I'm kind of surprised that that's not just a multi-line string constant. What does possibly unbound mean? Is this finding bugs in my code? Maybe it is. Maybe I should be using LSP. Let's see if I can break this again. If I hover over this, Whoops. This is the thing that I did with Lua that made me sad. I said, let's, come on. Well, that's clearly kind of annoying, but there's probably a thing for that. Let's say we rename this to override resource. And then all of those spots change, and life is cool. And then do that, and it got all, I guess it worked a little better this time. It got all cranky about the change and kept insisting that stuff was broken that wasn't because it didn't synchronize. Ah, I see. Thank you. That that clears things up. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I thought that there was a pyrite and a pyrite, and they were spelled slightly differently. Maybe I'm just putting out there what I would put into the world with weird naming conventions for things. For example, on Twitch, my channel points are named features, but the little icon associated with them are a little bug because it's it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's funny. Made me laugh anyway. Seem to be hitting with the nerd crowd. Let's take this all the way back. What actually changed there? Whoops. Oh, lint on save, I suppose, huh? Lost in the sauce? What kind of sauce? Do we want to know? Is it the adult beverage kind of sauce? Is it yakisoba sauce? Ooh. The list of things that I can't really have anymore includes rice noodles. I miss me a good yakisoba and a salad roll and rice and ramen. Yes, exactly. Now, somebody showed me a picture once of somebody that had a VW Bug with a custom license plate, and the vanity plate was feature or FEATR or something. You know you've done it right in that particular case. Sauce code. Do share. What are you working on right now? I guess if you're going to use an LSP code intelligence tool for a Sublime Text plugin, you need to give it more information about stuff, huh? This is a lot of errors. A lot of errors. Now I'm really feeling unfortunate about the quality of my code. Why did I do this? Huh. What do you know? This is probably coming from somewhere else, I would sincerely hope. Whoops, pardon me. Clearly, I should be going over some of this stuff in a thing, huh? Cannot access member view for type context helper. Yeah. Well, that's an example of something that's not actually broken, but context helper is a class that's meant to be used along with, as a mix-in with text commands. So in practice, there will in fact be one there. So, ha! Take that, LSP. Now I feel better about the rest of the bugs in this code. But, yeah. When I opened a URL within Sublime with right-click, it used Firefox instead of Chrome. Do you have one of these? That's not the right one. Pardon me. Did I get rid of it? I have this created. This is actually the command that's used for things in the menu. Like the official, I have more of them in here than the standard documentation would actually have. But there's weird issues with Python and how it chooses the appropriate browser. Although I can't remember the specifics of what that is at the moment. But if you look up, oh man, that's irritating. Whoops. Pardon me. Hey, pretty good. We're at 2 hours of stream, and I only managed to crang on the microphone one time. Here's something I would like to to test out, which I have not tested previously. You've heard, an hour and 49 minutes of my voice on the headset thus far, but if I was to do this, you should still hear me, but now it sounds different because I'm using a different mic setting. Better, worse, just different? What do you think of this? I kind of like the sound of this one better, but it needs more sweetening, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I imagine there's something that's been. Oh man, that's irritating too. I imagine that there's something like this that has been set up by the LSP people because they write plugins. They use this thing. They must. I had a different style back in the day. Slightly softer but clearer. Cool. In the first mode, it's got dual. Well, I guess based on their description, it's two microphones, but they talk about it in whether it's a cardioid or a hypercardioid pattern, which is semi-suspect because those are slightly different. They make it sound like there's two capsules in there. In this mode, it's using both of them, so it's broadcast quality, but you can hear presumably more room echo because this room hasn't been acoustically treated, and there's a computer under the desk and there and there and there and another one under there. There's a dog snoring over there. The other one is the unidirectional mode, wherein it does a very slight amount of noise cancellation at the expense of a little bit of frequency response, but it does sound, like I said, it's a little less soft, and perhaps less echoey and boomy. Going to be testing out this for working with videos as well. Let's just run out the rest of the stream with this. I'll be able to compare as I dare in a real world setting because I've only ever really done short little tests. But in any case, yeah, I would just look into, if you haven't already solved your problem there, Hacky Sack, how the web browser module chooses what the default browser is, because you might think that it's using the XDG browser setting, but I think it might also be sensitive to other environment variables as well that could accidentally be set. I can't remember the details right now. This particular thing is the first plugin that I wrote for Sublime, and the first of like 3 topics that I ever started in the Sublime Text forum. One was this. One was asking a question about why variables don't expand in key bindings for the exec command when the unofficial documentation said they did, which it turns out was a mistake in the documentation. And then one in the question, the forum when I had released override audit. Although I did stop updating the topic because it keeps necroing an old thread. Let's check. Something's happened in, pardon me, over yonder. Yeah, I see. My good friend Red Jar O Jam on Twitch, who is an artist extraordinaire, and who was, in fact, instrumental in helping me achieve Twitch affiliate in less than 2 weeks. And it actually would have been less time than that, but one of the requirements for being a Twitch affiliate is streams on 7 distinct days, is at 499 followers. So if you happen to be a Twitch person, and you like art and irreverence. I don't normally do this sort of thing here. That is probably a link which will take you to his page, and if it hasn't already happened, you should totally give him a follow and help me help him. There's a couple of the things that you need to be an affiliate on Twitch are 50 followers, an average of 3 viewers, 12 hours of streaming or 10 hours or something, and streams on a certain 7 distinct days, all within a 30-day period. And I did get, I was averaging around 5 average viewers. The hours and consecutive streams are easy. Followers are hard, and he totally knocked it out of the park, helping me out with that. So, may you change the C++ build system to precompile header files? You could absolutely do that if you know how to get the compiler to do that. Let's create a new window and get rid of this one. We don't need this one for right now. And let's also, so what you would do is say use view package file and open the build system that you are currently using. If you haven't created one yet, then you want the C++ build. This is one that's built directly into Sublime. There's also one for C. Confusingly or not, they're both inside of the C++ package, as we can see here. If you created your own user package, you could open that one instead. But I found that a lot of people create their own build system when they don't technically need to a lot of the time. This is what the default looks like, which invokes G++ to compile the current file to a file in the current directory. And then there's a variant for running it, which does the same thing. It compiles it and then it runs it. This would let you run a simplistic C program. And I'm not sure if I have one. Let's say created, sorry, we got to say syntax C++, create a test program. This is C, but it'll still work, right? C++ code, we save it to my home directory as test.c++. And when you try to build it, make sure you pick the run. Otherwise, you're going to be confused when it compiles and nothing happens. And never choose the name test under Linux. Never choose the name test under Linux. Hang on. The number of times I've screwed stuff up with that. Okay, there we go. There's a whole story behind that, but you need to be familiar with the intricacies or not of Bash. So, as seen here, this will very easily compile and run your program, and I didn't even have to do anything specific. But let's say you need to do something like you're asking here how to precompile header files. This would be a case where you select everything, hit copy, tools, build system, new build system from the bottom of the menu. Replace the stub with that. Save this as, say, my C build or something. We'll say my C++ build. Name it whatever you like. Don't matter. It just has to have the Sublime build extension. Sublime's going to offer to put this in the appropriate location. And there we go. And then you change the arguments here as appropriate. And you're going to want to change them in more than one place. So the question becomes, how do you precompile header files in C++? So let's see. Is there an option for that? If it's, I was not expecting that. There's a lot of stuff here. I mean, this is clearly the part where it's going to take a bit of using Sublime. You do need to know a little bit about how the tools you're using work. Often large projects have many header files. To create a precompiled header file, compile it as you would any other file if necessary. Maybe this doesn't work exactly the way that I thought I did. In the olden days, there was an option that made the compiler automatically do it. So maybe that works slightly different now. In that case, it's still totally possible, but it might be a little bit more complicated. Do you know how to do a precompile of headers manually? Because if you did, then it's pretty easy to get the build to do the same thing. I think -I would be telling it where -big I tells it which directories to look for include files in, and -little I tells it to include a file. But I had to guess. A precompiled header file. Well, maybe we should go about this in a slightly different way. Let's see how we do's it on Stack Overflow. Here's some code. All right. First, I compiled with a -h option in GCC. It showed an enormous list of headers that it used. Then I took a look at the compile flags. So I wrote a command to compile with the exact same flags. I see. So in this day and age, you need to precompile header files separately. That's probably more of a complicated thing. I would imagine if you want to do something like that, you probably don't want to do it inside of a Sublime build file. You probably want to create a make file for that. That's a little bit more of an advanced topic, though. You have to know how make works in general. Or some other build tool that creates a make file or otherwise builds things like CMake or things. Well, there you go. So if you're already using a make file, then I think you would just need to modify your make file to do something slightly different than what it's doing now. I wonder do I have any handy C code that could be of use. Maybe. Let's play. What the heck? We're at about 2 hours here. That's not too shabby. So let's give that a jingle. Do I have a... I have a thing. So let's do that. And toggle minimap. So I guess the first thing we need to see is, does this thing actually work? Now I'm doing this under Linux, but the same concept should apply wherever if you're using the same compiler. I'm assuming you're using G++. What is different in here? Probably need to fix that. There's a chance. Trailing white space, no big whoop. Whoops. Trailing white space is the doom. So that's probably all cool. Oh, thank you very much, Daniel. Do it every week. If you dislike looking at programming stuff and asking questions in general, I also stream on Twitch a couple of days a week too, Wednesdays and Fridays. Add a channel named ODAT-Nerd. I don't think I have a bot command for popping it up. You could do I still use Sublime for stuff. I will still answer Sublime questions, but it sort of gives me an opportunity to work on things that aren't plugins because I've been doing that for quite some time. In Windows, my main file will give me, if I include the implementation file, Undefined references if you build it with a custom header, but if you include the implementation instead of the header, it builds. Oh, thank you very much, Daniel. Welcome to the Nerd Herd. If that sounds more like a linker problem. If you see an undefined reference, that seems like it's a linker problem, which would make sense that it's not just the header file you need, but you also need to have the implementation of it as well linked in there. For example, this particular file has these functions in it, the context init, push, pop, and peek. And then also there's the header file, which has the exact same options in it. So any code that wants to use these functions has to include context. but it also has to link against a compiled version of the C version of the file here. C and C++ work the same in that regard for our purposes here. And also, first time I've seen a ligature used in C code. It's been a long time since I've looked at C. So you would assume that if you were to look at your make file, that's a bad example. I have a few for the core. This is a custom build. I refer to it as a custom build system, which is confusing because Sublime has build systems that are different than this. But this is going to compile a library named core, and it's going to include both of these files inside of the library. So it's going to link against both of those things. Now imagine if we make this, I don't know if I have the correct thing set. It's been 3 years since I actually did anything with this bad boy. Let's see. Probably could have done with that. Oh, because there's a couple of them in here. That's terribly broken. In an embarrassing fashion, might I add. Yeah, okay. All right, let's try that again. No? Well, I got it to break in a lot of interesting and fun ways. I'm not sure why that would even be the case, to be perfectly honest. It does the same thing there, right? Now we're just debugging my code, which is probably less interesting for the question at hand. There we go. To some degree, you probably shouldn't keep dependency information from compiler versions from 5 years ago hanging around in a directory, because that's probably going to make things unhappy. So that'll explain a bunch of that business. So, oh, right, the compiler changed stuff too. So, oh, that's the thing. I thought I did something about that. I was generating errors on purpose in a couple of these things. And I should totally be using the other build system for this because it's smart enough to hide the colors. Or I could use Terminus for this. That would be a good example of things too. Okay, so let's clean it. So you say you're done. Let's go again. Now it's just broken. With Linux, all I need is to include the header file in my main and not the implementation. That does not seem correct. Including the source file is the same as just having that code be a part of the same file. It should work the same both ways. Now I'm wondering why that seems to be doing nothing. There we go. Oh, that's just an unused variable. Okay, so if we were to run this, really? I don't have a run variant in my make file? No, of course I don't. Why would I? Why would I have a run variant in this thing? That makes no sense. Let's just use this terminal down here. So, okay, it does a thing, right? If I didn't include this vm.c here, and then I made stuff, don't tell me that there's nothing to be done, my friend. I normally make the make file be a dependency on itself, so changing these things makes things better. So now I've recreated the library. Oh, is it doing it for more than one thing? Okay, that might explain some stuff too. Now you'll notice I get an error that says undefined reference to VM interpret, which is this. And that makes sense because this code doesn't exist anywhere inside of the executable, right? It exists in this file, or whatever file that actually came from, whichever one that I just filled with a second ago, the core library. I told it not to include this, So it didn't try to compile this, which means it didn't try to link the compiled version of this into the library, which means when the library and the main executable are linked together, then that code doesn't exist in there, and as a result you get an undefined reference and it doesn't link. But I could resolve that issue by including this inside of here, theoretically. I would probably have to know exactly how I did that, like including core/vm.c, but I would probably do something like, oh, I guess that should probably work, right? So now it works again, because that code is actually part of it. You don't want to be including C files though. So I would double check the make file that you're using to make sure that all of the implementation files are ending up somewhere inside of the link line. In this particular case, in this make file, it's compiling both of these things into a core library and then linking that against the main code. But if you were to be using a more simple make file, you want to make sure that all of the C files are represented in there and compiled. Or you can also include them, but probably better to go the other way. I don't think GCC is as smart as it could be about dead code elimination, if you've ever heard of that. Although maybe Clang is smarter than that, and it has been 15 years since the last time I delved into that in any great detail, so that could potentially not be the case anymore as well. Incidentally, this is all about this particular project, which is so old. March 9th was the last time anybody touched this. 2018. 2016 was when this was originally created. So the reason why I did compile to begin with is because the stuff in the libraries and stuff were compiled by a different version of the compilers. But this is actually something that I've been toying with. One of the things I'd like to do on the channel is provide, people, one of the more common questions people have about Sublime Text has to do with syntax definitions and how you create one and use it to match the content of a file. And of course, because Ben's here, or there is a package that allows you to write up a grammar. He's the one that wrote the thing, and it will turn it into a syntax, which is super cool, but doesn't explain how syntaxes work in general. And syntaxes are one of my weaker points in Sublime, in that I know how they work and I know the concepts involved in creating context and creating matches and pushing and popping and all that sort of stuff. I'm familiar with it, but I don't really have any concrete knowledge in actually creating a whole syntax for something. And I think it would be cool as a topic for a video to say, or I guess not one video, but a short series of videos. Here's a language that does not have support in Sublime Text. Let's add support for this. And one part of that would be, let's create a syntax definition that will syntax highlight this. And then let's create the rules that tell it what things are symbols, so they'll show up inside of the symbol list so that you can navigate around to things like this inside of this make file, or stuff like that, or this definition of what the opcodes in this simple virtual machine are. And let's add some snippets and some custom key bindings and stuff. But in order to do that, you need a language to create a syntax for. And it has to be something simple enough that in the course of a video or two, you could have a syntax highlighter going. And there's not a lot of languages that fit that. But if we came up with our own simple language, then we could totally do that. And a simple assembly language type thing seems like it might be just the thing for that. Yeah, that will totally also do the same thing, compiling all of the C files together into one. All things told, if you're working on a bigger project with a lot of files, you can save yourself a lot of time by creating a make file with appropriate rules in it for dependencies, because then it knows, for example, in this particular case, it knows it needs to compile 2 files, and each one of these files turns into an object file. I knew you were going to say that, Ben. That probably would be a video on its own as well. I totally need to do something for that as well, but that's one of those things, much like LSP, that I had to dig into. But if you use a makefile for this, we'll note that if I tell this to rebuild the files, it is done. I need to do it inside of main, pardon me, and say make. It compiled main and it's done. And now when I tell it to do it again, it knows it doesn't have to do anything else. Whereas if you compile star.c or star.cpp, it's going to recompile every file every time. And if I came over here and saved just this one file, then theoretically, if I was in the appropriate locale, when I do this, it knows it only needs to compile one file, and then the other one hasn't been changed. And then if I do it again, nothing to be done. You can save yourself a ton of time. If you're only working on small programs that are 1 or 2 files, less of a big deal, but a handy thing to know, all things told, I think. Hang on here. Okay, asking a little question there. I think we may. Oh, my Mac can't talk to iCloud. That's terrible. Hopefully life won't come to an end if my computer can't talk to the iCloud. I think we should maybe call a close to the stream because it has been a couple hours. It is kind of late. Again, I will be streaming on Twitch tomorrow and Friday if you'd like to see more of me and ask questions. You could even ask questions like this. They're programming streams. Remember, you can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you somehow found your way into the live stream by accident, hello. Buttons down below. Thumbs, subscribe, share, ring the bell notification icon. I do weekly videos as well. And hopefully going to remember to, with the calendar thing I put in, to announce the streams, in advance of the actual day. I think that totally helps. Ben said something. Let's see. Hard to find a language that's both used a lot and doesn't have a syntax. Yeah, exactly, right? And that's why I was thinking if I could come up with, and this is the difficulty that I was having with this particular thing. For the purposes of teaching people how syntaxes work, you kind of want to tweak all of the corners. You want to have more than one context. You want to have a place where there's maybe an anonymous context. You want to have a place where there's a push and a pop. Now with Sublime Text 4, you're going to want to have something that has a branch and a fail, just so that you can describe all of those things. Maybe that's like a series of like 7 videos, each talking about each little thing. So not only do you need a language that's small enough that in a short series of videos you could create a syntax that plausibly highlights the whole thing, but also something that ticks all of those descriptive boxes, which makes that a lot harder, I would think. But if we came up with our own toy language for something, that could be a cool thing to do. And then of course we might need something like what we're seeing here as some sample code for actually being able to run the language as well, because maybe part of the telling someone how to add support for something is adding a build system for it. I was actually just looking through the man page for that literally a couple hours ago. Oh, yeah, it's one of the first things I set up on a new system. Remarkably cool. One of the first things you do when you set up a new system is add, that, but you also want to set yourself up for, if I typed that correctly, no, I did not. A prompt that very clearly points out that you are root. You are not you, and you don't have the same little jiggy on the end, because this way lies madness. You don't want to have a command prompt sitting at root any longer than you absolutely have to, unless you really like reinstalling Linux or having weird intractable problems. But being able to do this, you know, as ridiculous as that is, super cool. Fun fact that I relearned the other day, sudo npm install -g something is different from being root, assuming I typed that correctly, and of course I didn't because I'm trying to type it fast, doing this. Those two things are different. You wouldn't think they are, but they are. And I think it has something to do, I mean, I knew about it in the past, and there's various reasons why you want to do it this way and not that way if you want to globally install some stuff. And then it completely fell out of my head, and then I was confused like all get out in a stream or before a stream the other day. Yeah, those are different in that particular case. Sudo is great, and yeah, you should totally. What actually caused you to look at that if you never knew about it before? What did you see that made you think of it? Because that's an interesting question too. Clearly, I know the root password for things, but not being root for a long time or for any longer than I have to be, that is where I like it, so to speak. Curiosity, yeah, but how did you have curiosity for a thing? Did you know that it existed or you came across the directory and then just investigated what it was for? I love to learn, not only new things, but how people came up with new things. Like one of the things I'm curious about in the general sense is who had, some fruit that was like super fermented and decided that it tasted good enough to eat it. I mean, realistically, we know it's probably because there was nothing else to eat at the time or something. But yeah, you always wonder, you eat a food that's like real bad by your standards. It doesn't taste right. Or you drink a thing that, like durian, for example. If you've ever experienced durian, prime example of who got one of these off a tree, cracked it open, smelled it, and said, I wonder what it tastes like. Because that doesn't seem like the sort of thing even a curious person would come up with. But yet, here we are, people eating durian, and whenever I hang out with one of my friends, if we go to the right kind of ice cream shop, he's not allowed to sit near anybody else because he always gets durian ice cream. And it still smells like durian even though it's ice cream, so he has to sit on the other side until he's done and then eat a breath mint before he's allowed to come back and hang out with us. So I'm always interested in how people come up with stuff like that as well. Yeah, exactly, right? I think I mentioned that at one point, and someone was like, well, they probably discovered that they watched, in regards to fermented fruit, they probably saw that some animals ate it and then acted kind of funny, and they were curious about that, or they were, thirsty or what have you. But hit the character count. Oh, there's a limit to how much you can type in the chat. That's interesting. I was unaware of that. Uncommented the group sudo, but a side effect elsewhere prevented me from having a problem. Ah, neat. Yeah, see, that sort of thing is like interesting too. Oh. I am unhappy with the state of how I ended up with trailing spaces on things. I'm just sort of clearing stuff up now. Ah, interesting. Oh yeah, I guess it does have a little thing down there, doesn't it? I've never paid that much attention to typing stuff like that. Does that apply to comments in a video as well? It must not, because I've put some lengthy instructions in there at some point. But there's currently a minimum of moderation going on, so feel free to type with impunity. You got pretty close there, though. It's like when you think you've crafted the perfect tweet and then you realize you're 2 characters short and you have to go back through and try to see if there's some word somewhere or something that you can just slightly tweak and reword to give yourself the 2 characters you need. Or you have to decide that your thing can't have a period on the end of it or something. Harsh. I'm just discarding some chunks here because I'd like this code to be a little clean in the thing there. Clearly, using Vim for an extended period of time will leave you with a lot. And oh wow, that's broken. We'll worry about that. Oh, yeah, that one is one we actually want to keep. Use a contraction. Yeah. We've got a fix for leaving trailing space behind if you have the only modified settings enabled. Cool. That's hey, Bearminator, welcome to the stream. Oh, you totally have the cool Bearminator avatar here on YouTube as well, too, huh? Cool. That I've tried to use that setting in the past, the one that only modifies or that only trims trailing spaces on lines that you modified, but it never seemed to do what I wanted. But never really investigated. I just flipped the setting back the other way because in general, trailing spaces make me sad for cases like this. But so was there actually like a bug involved in that? How's your day been, Bearminator? Or evening? Or afternoon? Yeah. World clock. Did you catch any of Red's stream earlier? I'm doing well. We're just actually getting close to wrapping up here. We ran through a variety of programming questions that people were having. Living the dream. Yeah, I am classically bad at keeping time zones straight, but yours is the real statistical outlier, I think. Or you like nap a lot. If you had leftover indentation and then deleted the new line to the left. Ah, interesting. Yeah, that seems like it would cause some issues. Everybody in the chat, Bearminator is one of the cool people that also hangs out on Twitch. And he's over here supporting me on YouTube's as well. Here on YouTube, the streams that I do are more related to Sublime Text in general and asking questions about it. On Twitch, I do just regular software development stuff, also using Sublime. In either case, I love asking questions and helping people. And we have a good time. So if you have been lurking in the chat and you feel free to say hi and ask questions here or in any stream or in the comment section of any of my videos as well. And if you've ever asked a question in the comments of a video and it took me a little while to reply, I apologize for that as well. But no matter how many times you tell YouTube that you want all notifications for comments, sometimes it decides that you don't need to be told that a comment was made. Sometimes it shows you a notification and sometimes it sends you an email. Sometimes it only does one of those two things, and sometimes it does neither. And I have no idea why any of that might be the case. But I do answer questions as soon as possible if I get them inside of a comment. Sometimes I have to remember to troll through and see if there's something that's been asked and hasn't been answered. And YouTube does not make that easy. Not hardly at all. What's going on here? Oh, and someone's asking something over here. Oh. Modulo on the Discord, or can't remember the nick. There's been many people said a thank you in the in the Discord. You're very welcome, sir, if you happen to still be watching. Again, if there's, I have a lot of videos on the channel. It's a slow going process to go back through them and do things like add table of contents and actual useful titles for a lot of the earlier videos, because I didn't really think that the channel was going to take off. They were just for me to be able to post links to. But clearly they should be, there you go, retro. That's right. I can't believe I forgot that. Retro. I love retro in general. But a lot of the videos on the channel were originally meant just for me to link. I didn't think they would take off, and now it's kind of tricky to find them in a YouTube search otherwise. Oh, I wonder how long he went after I had to drop out. I've been trying to drum up support for him to get to his 500th follower, which is his next big milestone. He's more humble than he lets on. He's not really more humble than he lets on. But I hope you have a good day if you just woke up. I had not too bad of a day. Some intractable problems, some things solved. We got to hang out with Red for a little while. We got to hang out in some other chats. We had a great time tonight answering questions for people, including Retro. And yeah, great. This is what we'd like to see. I think, however, that we're going to do a little bit of that one right there and sort of call the stream for tonight. We've gone for 2.5 hours. I'd like to keep these around that. I'd actually love to go more, but sleep is a thing that I desperately need. However, I will be on Twitch tomorrow and on Friday, and depending on how things go, those are the days that I want to dedicate to streaming stuff in general, but I could probably just jump on there at any time. It's like super fun. And yeah, swoosh. I'm also going to work on some more of making all of my streams a little bit better as well. And apologize if I seem to be self-promoting a little bit too much, but historically I've never done it at all. I'm trying to, find a little bit of a balance there, and it's an exciting time to be able to be streaming. Yes, it's the all streams for me happen at 8 p.m. Pacific. Give or take 5 minutes out of the way, depending on whether technology is being friendly or not, and usually go for 2 to 3 hours. YouTube streams should be, and now that I have a thing in my phone to remind me, scheduled a couple of days in advance. So as long as you visit YouTube, or maybe even if you have the bell notification icon, it might send you an email. I can't quite remember, but it will totally remind you about that. On Twitch, they just, if you follow and enable notifications, it'll tell you when I'm going live if you want to catch one of those streams as well. And YouTube Barminator, thanks so much, and to everybody else in the chat as well. And just as a reminder, the replay for this will be publicly available. And by that I mean searchable on YouTube if you were to look on the channel and whatnot for 24 hours, and then it goes unlisted, because otherwise if it pops up in a YouTube search, anybody that clicks on it's going to notice it is 2.5 hours long. It doesn't answer their question. They don't watch it. YouTube decides that people that see my videos in chat searches aren't interested in my videos. They stop showing them to people. The fabric of the space-time continuum folds in upon itself. It's a whole thing. So it'll be 24 hours up. It will be in a playlist called Sublime Text Live that is available on the channel. It's, a matter of fact, in that playlist right now. So if you want to watch it after the fact and go back over any of the stuff that we covered previously, totally possible to do that. The chat will replay for reasons known only to YouTube. It may take 24 hours after the stream before it decides to remember that it recorded chat. I have no idea what's up with that, but live chat replay is in fact enabled, even if it tells you it's not. It seems to be a weird quirk of its processing of the file that it's streaming out to you. I think it stores it locally and then processes it as an upload, and then it takes a while. who can say what the mysterious people at Google are doing? But thanks so much, everybody, for coming. We will see you again next week. Of course, we'll have a video on the channel right here on a yesterday, on a Monday. That's the day. They drop every week, and you can catch me in a bunch of other places. And remember, if you have any questions, if you have suggestions for video topics, the ideas on, as we said previously during the video, questions that you've had about Sublime that you found an answer to, features of Sublime that you wish you knew about sooner, things you wish you could do in Sublime, and maybe we can and you just don't realize it, let me know down in the comment section of any of my videos, Twitter, Discord, forum, DM, anything like that. That is what drives the channel. And until the next time we see each other in any of those locations, thanks so much for a great stream. Thank you all. I hope you have a great day or morning or evening, whatever it happens to be for you in the terms of universal greeting time. Have a good evening, everyone, and we'll see you in the next stream. So please have a sublime day. And don't notice that there's not a physical button down here, so I totally have to look and point my finger before I can successfully press the button that ends the stream.